let's talk about money in the criminal justice process. So it all starts when you get arrested. You commit a crime or you don't commit a crime. Either way, you get arrested. Well, if you have any money on you, well, that money can be used to pay your bail if they offer you a bail. It can go onto your books in the jail, which means you can buy commissary. You can buy, the basic things that you need besides food. Like you can actually buy shampoo or buy something other than the state soap that they give you. So you immediately have a different level of comfort and possibility of access to freedom, right? Because when you get arrested, you get taken to the magistrate, at least here in Virginia. The magistrate can either release you on your own recognizance or set an immediate cash bail, or you can have to go to a hearing in front of a judge. But again, the magistrate having that option means that if you have money on you or if you have access to money, you can literally walk out. If you don't, you're going to be in that jail, at least overnight or at least for a few days, depending on how long before you get your hearing. So that's already a fundamental kind of inequality based on the amount of money you have. So then if they don't set a bail or if you can't pay it, then you have to go in front of a judge. So 1 day, 3 days, 4 days, something like that. You go in front of the judge. Well, the judge may set a bail. And the judge may say, okay, well, I'll release you for this amount of money. And that could be lower or higher, depending on, kind of what the facts of the case are. But again, if you have the money to pay that bail and they set it, well, you can go to work. You can continue to pay your rent or your mortgage. You can continue to take care of your kids. You can continue to essentially get your life together. And even if you're going to be convicted later, well, you can get your life together. You can save some money. You can sell some things. You can do whatever you need to do to prepare. Well, if you don't have the money for that, well, you're not going to be able to pay your rent, which means you're going to lose your apartment. You're not going to be able to take care of your kids, which means CPS is going to take them. Even if you get found not guilty later, you will have lost your car, your home, and your kids for a crime you weren't guilty of. And that seems fundamentally unfair and problematic. So then you continue on with the process. It comes down to the lawyer. Do you really think that you're going to get the same level of attention and detail and performance from a public defender who has 40 cases they're trying this week versus a private attorney who says, hey, you're the only thing on my plate this week. You are my focus. Probably not. So there's then a different level of access to the right to defense or the kind of outcome, because that same prosecutor, that prosecutor instead of that public defender is also trying 40 cases. And they actually have more resources than public defenders. They have more help. They have more money, but they're not having the time. So if they say, hey, I can just meet with this public defender and offer him a deal and say, look, this is it. Either you take this 5-year plea or we're going to give every charge in the world at you and it's going to be 40 years or 60 years or life. Well, most of the time the person's going to take that charge because that's the only way they can actually continue on, because they don't want to face a life sentence. Whereas the person who has to deal with a paid attorney who can file thing after thing after thing and motion after motion, and the prosecutor didn't have time to deal with it, is like, look, man, what do you want? What do you want to make this go away? Because I don't have time to respond to 30 motions today. Say, okay, well, we want a year, or we want, time served, or we want probation. Well, they have extra leverage in actually getting the outcome of a plea deal if they decide to take a plea deal. Or again, if you go to court, well, that prosecutor who hasn't had time to prepare his case and has to, follow the speedy trial thing is, again, probably not going to get blown out of the water by the public defender who has 40 cases that week. But the private attorney who has all the time in the world and can hire paralegals and do everything else to file every motion and research things and investigate, well, they're probably going to have a lot better outcome in the trial. So say you are convicted. Forget the people who were innocent and lost everything just because they couldn't afford bail. Say you are convicted and you have to be incarcerated. Well, just like in the jail where you were able to, buy commissary, you were able to buy basic things, you were able to maybe buy a radio, you could afford to get on the phone and talk to people. That's a big difference. When you go to prison, your life is dramatically different whether you have money or not. Because the basic things in prison are provided in theory. Like where I was, they originally gave out soap and then they stopped giving out soap, so you had to buy your own soap. So if you don't have money, if you don't have anything coming in, they'll give you this little sliver of hotel soap, and that's supposed to last you a week, or in some places 2 weeks. Come on, dude, that's literally one wash. Everybody knows that, and they know that, and even they're like, yeah, this is messed up. We don't know why the warden decided to get rid of giving out soap, because that should be at least a basic necessity. But even if you had that, say you were at a place that did give you soap, well, there's still a level of scarcity. There's a level of need for the most basic things. And people say, oh, well, you don't need coffee, you don't need extra food. I've seen guys lose so much weight in prison because they got nothing to eat. I've also seen people just sit there and pound potatoes and bread and whatever they serve in the chow hall and eat everybody else's. And yeah, they don't lose weight, but they tend to be diabetic. They tend to gain weight in all the worst ways. So it's a bad situation. So having access to resources to where you never have to scramble, you never feel like you have to hustle or do anything else, to be able to buy coffee, or to be able to have money to call home, or to be able to have money to write letters, or be able to have money to sit down and have a meal at the end of the day. Having access to money makes your life so much easier because it's not about a daily scramble. You're not struggling to survive and get by. Instead, you're able to focus on something you want. You're able to get access to books. We all had access to the library, but there would sometimes be month-long, 2-month-long stretches where the library just isn't open. Sorry. So if somebody can send you books, you have money, you can order books. Like you have access to education, you have access to entertainment, you have access to a different level of things. Same thing with the TV. So you could order, when I first got in, it was a 5-inch TV and it cost $215. Okay, now they sell 13-inch TVs. Nobody was making the small ones anymore. They wanted them to be clear, a whole thing. But still, that I think it's like $220 or $230 now. That doesn't seem like a lot of money to somebody who makes plenty of money on the outside. Somebody in prison, $220, $230 is a lot. If I'm making 45 cents an hour, which is the max you can make in Virginia, like the biggest thing, and I'm getting 30 hours a week, that means I get $54 a month. That means I have to work, how many is that? 4, 5, 6, probably about 6 months, assuming to be able to pay for that TV. Like that's a problem. That's a serious problem. Because again, that other person who gets to come in and he can say, hey, I can buy a TV and I can buy books and I can buy my stuff and I can relax and I can better myself and I can read and God forbid I want to go to college. Now, thankfully, the Pell Grant is being expanded next year to include associate's degrees for people who are incarcerated. But like when I went, I was able to go to college. I was incredibly privileged. I was able to basically have my family pay money out of pocket to send me to college, whereas other people like literally didn't have the money for coffee or couldn't afford a TV or couldn't afford to order a book if they wanted to read it. So the difference in my experience and the way I was able to kind of like better myself and grow and learn and expand was largely due to the resources that I had. So you have this whole effect of money during the period of incarceration. Then let's look at release. So like in my case, I was given a conditional pardon, which allowed me to get out before the completion of my sentence because I had been sentenced to more than basically double the high point of the guidelines. So they were saying this was fundamentally unfair, but for me to earn that conditional pardon, for me to get that release, I had to have a home plan and I had somebody who could pick me up. So again, somebody who, doesn't have friends or family or doesn't have money or can't rent an apartment, they will not be released under that conditional pardon because they don't have a place to live. Like they literally will not get access to that same thing. The governor said that my sentence was unjust and that I did a lot of work and deserved to be released. A person who didn't have money or didn't have family, even in the same situation where their sentence was just as unjust and had done just as much work, would not be released because they didn't have a home plan and they didn't have someone to pick them up. I mean, that's mind-boggling, right? Like literally the same situation, same level of deserving, totally different outcome. And then when you look at reentry, I had a place to land. I had a place to stay. I was able to get transportation. I had people hitting me up and offering me jobs, and I had people bringing me trash bags full of clothes and asking me what I needed. I was able to connect with local services where I was able to get some tools. Like I was really, really fortunate. For the other person who's getting out, like imagine, say you can get a halfway house bed, because we have bed shortages here in Virginia. Say you can get a halfway house bed. So you get out, you get to this halfway house, you've got, if you're lucky, some money from your books, but maybe nothing. I think they have to give you $25. So you have $25 to your name. You get out, you have nothing but the clothes they let you out with, which are khaki pants that are usually too long and a brown shirt and a pair of slip-on shoes. Okay, you get to this halfway house and they say, oh, well, we'll try to connect you with resources, like we can try to find something, but if you're lucky, you're in a place where the bus is free. If you're not, you're spending some of that $25 on that bus the first day. And then you're running around, you're trying to get clothes, and you have to go get a license. And a license isn't free. Like, you have to pay to get your license. Like, it's one thing after another, after another, after another, that, okay, now you don't have any money, and you're living in this halfway house, and you only get 90 days there. So you get 90 days to save up enough money to be, okay, or you're out on the street. So you don't make enough money, or say you do. Say you save up $5,000. Okay, cool, but you got no other support, you got no other way. You can, put a deposit on an apartment, you can start living in that apartment, but you're struggling day to day. Like, God forbid you have kids that you're trying to reconnect with or take care of. God forbid you have, like, things bigger than yourself. Like, it's hard enough to take care of yourself, but when you have that. So it's just a reality that it's really easy to judge somebody. Like, I've gotten this a lot because I've been so successful upon getting out. Well, I had a really big landing pad, and I had a whole lot of support, and I had a whole lot of opportunities. And that guy who went back in the first 48 hours, which is the most dangerous time for somebody as far as recidivism, well, it's really easy to judge and be like, oh, he didn't want it. Well, maybe he didn't. And also maybe he literally had nowhere to go and nobody had helped him find the skills that he needed to succeed because the Department of Corrections didn't do any correcting. They did some warehousing and they did some further traumatizing, but they didn't help him because all my rehabilitation, all my growth was because I had access to resources. It wasn't the Department of Corrections that did that. It wasn't programs or counselors. It was the fact that I was able to make connections with people, that I was able to go to college, that I was able to talk to a therapist on the phone every week for 12 years. Like, I was able to do all these things because I had that support. And if we made that support more widely available, if we made the focus rehabilitation, if we made sure there was transitional housing and there was support and there was actual employment and connection, we'd have a much higher success rate. And yeah, not everybody. I can't ever say that everybody's going to turn their life around. Can't say that everybody's going to make the best of it because some people won't. But to judge everybody as if they don't want it or they're not capable of it or they're not deserving of it because they haven't had that opportunity, is patently unfair and unrealistic. It reminds me of the thing that used to make me the most mad is people would say, well, that's not my problem, that's the family's problem. It's like, dude, I'm really glad you grew up in a family where they taught you the right things and taught you morals and taught you a work ethic and taught you all the important things about life, because I was locked up with a lot of people who didn't have a family or had an incredibly physically or sexually or emotionally abusive family, or were in foster care with some of those horror stories you can't believe. I literally remember sitting in the cell with a guy who was recounting his story from foster care, and I could not stop crying because it was just breaking my heart. And he was just calmly reciting what he had done because he was so traumatized he couldn't even connect to the horrendousness of what he had experienced. And then to again say that person should be judged on the same footing as somebody else is just disconnected from reality, because it is not equal, it is not fair. And even if we say, oh, okay, we're going to treat people equally, we're going to treat people the same, that's not equity. Because if I grow up and I get to go to a good school and I get a good education, I have access to resources, I don't have to scramble, I don't have to hustle to get food and the basic needs in prison, and this person grew up and they didn't have access to education and they were tremendously abused and they didn't have any support while they were in, and they're scrambling just to make sure they have coffee to drink or just to have food to eat or shampoo to use or lotion, well, our experience is going to be dramatically different. And to say that equal is truly equitable is just not true.